Welcome everyone to the 47th episode of our Space Shooter live streams. So, I just wanted to make a quick disclaimer, right? That I had some things going on yesterday and I couldn't do the live stream. And I haven't been able to do anything over the weekend either. So as much as I liked, or as much as I said I would like to work on this outside of the live stream, I haven't been able to yet. The plan is still to move forward with that in mind. So I'm still going to try my very best to continue working on this after the live stream closes and just keep moving forward, right? But regrettably, I haven't been able to get that right yet. So sadly, and I'm disappointed about it too, but we will have to do a little bit of catch up, revision. Where are we? What have we done? What do we need to do? All of that. So please bear with me as we do that. Hopefully it only will take us 15 minutes maximum, and then we can actually get into the true development, So I'm going to go through this as quickly and clearly as I can, and then I will what's the word? Once I've done that, I will continue working on it and try and implement what Perplexity has told us, or rather recommended we should do. So I'm gonna have to just take a moment and go through this, right? So like I said, 15 minutes maximum. By 2:15, you can't see the time on my machine, but it's currently 3 minutes past 2 over here. So at about that time, 2:15, I'll call it, and we'll just get into the development, regardless of how far we've gotten with the catch up. So here we go, right? So we've got NPC Behavior Manager open, as you can see, and I'm just going to go through this because the last thing I've talked to Perplexity about was apparently NPC Behavior Manager or something, right? So let's actually see the prompt, right? So here's the code for enemyshipcontroller.gd, and I gave the code, and on and on and on and on it goes, and then still keeps going, and here is the code for NPC Behavior Manager, and that's the code for NPC Behavior Manager. And finally, here's the code for Behavior Seek, which is this, right? And Behavior Shoot, and I gave it all the context, right? So don't worry if you didn't read that, you're not supposed to. It was just to get to the bottom of the prompt, right? So I gave it 4 script files, and now my real prompt, right? So now that you have the context, Perplexity, here's my actual prompt. I have a problem with how the NPC Behavior Manager code is handling assigned patterns. The way we want to implement pattern assignment follows multiple behaviors in a single pattern. The current implementation only supports so-called mono behavior patterns. I've been trying to figure out a way to improve the existing logic to support multi-behavior patterns, but I'm struggling to get a good implementation, and I would appreciate your help with this. So that was the last thing we did. Okay, and Perplexity has replied. Quite a comprehensive reply, by the way. I was looking over it just before the live stream began. There's quite a lot to unpack there. But before we do, as you can see, it is a lot, right? Let's just go over the second last thing. So I've thought of a more interesting way of handling the behavior sequences per pattern. I created a dictionary at the top of the enemy ship controller file called patterns and so on. This dictionary will use the pattern name string as the key and the value as an array string containing the behavior names in order of execution. Here's the snippet, the code snippet showing what I mean. Each entry in the patterns dictionary becomes a new pattern, and this index can then be used in the parameters data dictionary each time. My only concern is that the lower layers will not have access to the full dictionary, so how can we ensure they will receive the full behavior sequence each time? Will passing just the index array work? Passing just the index array will work, and your patterns dictionary is a good idea, right? And it gives some explanations. You don't need to separate carriage mediums. Just include the sequence array in the existing parameters data dictionary. And then I went on and said mono behavior, multi behavior, and so on, right? So now the answer to the multi behavior thing is, yes, you are right. The current NPC behavior manager only supports one behavior per pattern, a mono behavior, right? To support patterns like attack, which has seek, shoot, and flee, you need the tactical layer as well. Well, not 2. I thought that was 2, but no. You need the tactical layer 2, store the whole sequence for the current pattern, execute behaviors one by one, and move to the next behavior when the previous one completes or fails. And then below is a minimal, focused way to extend your existing design to support multi-behavior patterns. So what changes are needed? You will need to add 3 core concepts to the NPC behavior manager. First, a behavior sequence for the current pattern, then a pointer when indexed to the current behavior in the sequence, and finally, logic in the onBehaviorCompleted function to either advance to the next behavior or to finish the pattern. Okay, and enemy shop controller just needs to pass the sequence in parameters when assigning a pattern. And parameters, remember, is one of the arguments that gets passed through between the layers, right? So parameters becomes data later. Data later. And then in enemy shop controller, you pass the pattern sequence. So when assigning a pattern, you look up its sequence in patterns and pass it in parameters. So an example for an attack pattern, somewhere when you decide to attack, instead of emitting seek directly, and then you use this for testing, for example, function test attack pattern. If enemy shops.size is 0, then return, and it just gives some code, right? So I don't want to go through the code because I know that it can be quite dense and taxing, and we also don't have a lot of time. I remember I promised that we only have until 1:15, and we have basically 5 minutes to do that. So I'm just going to go through this. So there's something we have to do in the enemy shop controller, which is pass the pattern sequence. And then in the NPC behavior manager, we have to manage the behavior sequence. And then there's some code about that. Add these new properties near the top, and then update the onPatternAssigned function to store the sequence. Excuse me, and start the first behavior. Then the function onPatternAssigned with the arguments and some more code, right? And then there's a code snippet as well. Then you need to create a helper function to start the current behavior in the sequence. So function start next behavior, and then the function itself. Some more code snippets. And now here's some text. You no longer need to match the pattern inside the execute pattern, the execute pattern function. So you don't need that match pattern block anymore. You just need so for multi-step patterns, right? You just need instead you need the pattern name, and that's mainly a label, and then plus a behavior sequence. So you can keep execute pattern as a thin wrapper or route everything through the onPatternAssigned. For clarity, you can even remove execute pattern and call start next behavior directly as above. Okay, and then you've got the onBehaviorCompleted function needs to be updated to advance the sequence, and that's how you update it here with these function snippets. Then you can keep the cancel logic mostly the same, and then here's the cancel logic. You can remove or simplify check status if you fully handle status inside. And then behavior scripts, nothing major to change. So behavior seek.gd and behavior shoot.gd are already emitting. behavior completed.emit, and behavior completed.emit seek completed and shoot status data. That's exactly what NPC Behavior Manager now consumes after all of the edits we're supposed to be making. And then just ensure they use completed or failed as status strings consistently. So where are you now? The enemy ship controller defines pattern templates like attack, which has seek, shoot, and flee. And then when assigning a pattern, it passes behavior sequence via parameters. And the NPC Behavior Manager stores behavior sequences and pattern names, runs the behaviors in order, advances to the next behavior when one completes, and fails the whole pattern if any of the behaviors fail. Okay, that gives you a working multi-behavior pattern system while reusing almost all of your existing architecture. If you share how you plan to trigger the so-called attack pattern, example from a key on player detection or so on, etc., then the next step is wiring that trigger and testing what debug prints to confirm. So seek to shoot to later flee, and making sure that they run in order and that everything goes as planned and so on. Right? So that's that. And just checking something. So the next thing we obviously have to do is go through the code that we just saw here from the very top. Here we go. So starting over here somewhere, test attack pattern in the enemy ship controller, right? So in Godot engine over here, we can go to the enemy ship controller function over there and have a look, right? So apparently it wants us to do this test attack pattern function, right? I don't know if that's a very good idea to do right now, although we do have to test it, so setting up a test function kind of isn't necessarily a bad idea. But yeah, so I see we do have a concurrent viewer in this live stream. Welcome. Sorry I didn't greet you when you joined, but I was trying to do a recap. We've kind of hit the 15-minute mark now, so the recap is done. And now we actually have to get into the development stuff. So if there is something you want to say in the comments, then please do say it. I encourage engagement. And you know, if you want me to talk about something or explain something in more depth, I'm happy to do that. Again, I can only do what I assume is the best, and if you can't follow, I don't know that until you let me know. So so please do comment, and hopefully I'll be able to address those comments as they come in. So yeah, in the enemy ship controller, it wants us to do the following, right? Pass pattern sequence. So when assigning a pattern, look up its sequence in patterns and pass its parameters. Example, for an attack pattern, somewhere when you decide to attack, instead of emitting seek directly, use this for testing. For example, you create a function called test attack pattern, taking in the, well, it doesn't take in anything. There are no parameters, right? So if enemy ship.size is 0, then return. So if there are no enemy ships available, don't do anything. And then if the enemy ship ID, well, we're setting it, right? So enemy ship ID is enemy ships.id, and then wait, enemy ships.id, enemy ships should be an array. So it should be enemy ships at a position .id. Anyway, whatever. Then I suppose would probably need to take in the enemy ship ID here, test attack pattern on an enemy ship ID, right? Or then we'll have to loop through all the enemy ships one by one, right? Whatever. Let's not go too far in digression, right? Let's just stick to the code, and we'll flag anything we have concerns about. We'll ask Perplexity about them afterwards, but don't digress too much, because again, like we've seen in the last few live streams, that just takes us off track and we run out of time and nothing gets done. So coming back to this, the enemy ship ID, we set that to be the current enemy ship ID, right? So enemy ships at a specific index .id, and then variable pattern name attack, that's the name of the pattern. If patterns.has pattern name, then we create a behavior sequence, which is an array, and we assign that parameters at pattern name dot duplicate, right? So we're copying the patterns array from the enemy ship. No, from the enemy ship controller directly. So it's got access to the patterns dictionary here. It's literally just going to copy them. Behavior sequence and array, and patterns is currently a dictionary. So this is clearly not correct code. Something is wrong here. But then it was generated by Perplexity that doesn't have the full context of the entire project. Even though I gave it all the files. I gave it enemy ship controller. I gave it behavior, the NPC behavior manager. I gave it seek and shoot. Four scripts. So it should know, but it doesn't. Anyway. You can keep the move enemy to waypoint or move enemy to random waypoint as find waypoint, which is a mono behavior, or you can also convert them to using patterns like find waypoint. The same way. So even for mono behaviors, you could still use them in the patterns dictionary, which is perfect, right? That's the way you want it. Even a mono behavior should be listed as a pattern. A mono behavior pattern should still be listed as a pattern in patterns, right? It's just you want all patterns to go through the patterns dictionary. And oh no, this is right. Okay, I just realized this line here that I thought was wrong is actually not wrong, it's right. Because you're taking patterns at key, which is pattern name, dot duplicate value. So the value that is returned from doing this index gets returned by duplication, right? And gets assigned into an array, which is right, because the key values are as follows. It's a string followed by an array. A string followed by an array. So that's correct. Okay, never mind. My mistake. This time I was the one who was hallucinating. So, so yeah. Then in the NPC behavior manager, we can manage the behavior sequence. Right. And more code and more code and more code. So, so what I'm going to do now is take this onto one of my other monitors and keep it on my right, which is this side, that way, right? And so to the right of me, and then I'll have my Godot editor over here. Like, so basically what I'm going to do is that, and keep Godot engine open over here. right? So you won't be able to see the suggestions of perplexity anymore, but I can. And the reason for that, of course, is just so that I don't have to keep switching contexts, right? Switching monitor tabs and whatever, windows. And this way I can have direct access to both. I can read the text on the one side and put in the edits on the other side, and it will go faster. And I don't have to distract my my thinking or digress just to find out what was I supposed to do next every time. As you can imagine, that is quite disruption for me. So in the enemy ship controller, we've got find waypoint takes in seek, right? Which is the so-called mono behavior pattern, which is cool. So now we can go to the very bottom, and we've got a function called testing shoot behavior, right? Or test shoot behavior. So that this is not an unprecedented type of function in the script. We have one. So test attack pattern is not a like I said, it's not unprecedented. There is a precedence for it. So let's do that. We can say function test attack pattern. Okay, and then over here we can fill in the code, right? So if enemy ships dot size is equal to 0, or rather, if not enemy ships, or enemy ships dot size is 0, then return. Right? So if there is no enemy ships array that contains all the enemy ships, if it's a null array, or if the size of the ships is 0, i.e. we have an array defined but it's empty, in either case there's no enemy ships left to test the attack pattern with, and so we return. Test attack pattern fails, right? And that's fine. So now the next thing we can do is create a variable, and we can call that enemy ship ID, and that is of type unknown. So the colon equals just means lazy evaluation using the interpreter at runtime to determine what type the variable should take on, right? So usually you can do static typing, right? And then you can also do what's called dynamic typing. So some of you would know this already, and those of you who don't, I'm explaining that, right? So this would be an example of dynamic typing. So for example, enemy ship ID takes on enemy ships dot ID. Can't find member ID in base array, as explained, right? So enemy ships at position 0 dot ID. Cannot infer the type of enemy ship ID variable because the value doesn't have a set type. Okay, so type int. There. You happy, Godot engine? At the top, where's the typing space? The column for typing is column 40. Yes, column 40. And assignment is column 60. So here, this should be 40, and this should be 60. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're saying enemy ship ID is a type integer and takes in enemy ships at 0.id. So the first enemy ship in the array, doesn't matter who it is, just get his ID and assign it to this variable. Okay, we don't need to do all of them yet. We can do a loop later to sift through them all if we wanted to, or we could make it specific, right? So you take in a parameter here on top that says which index of enemy ship. So that's the first one. Then we have a variable called pattern name, and that's of type string. And that is taking on the string called attack. Right? Then we say if patterns, so if the patterns dictionary dot has the key for attack. Actually, no, we don't use string like that. We just use pattern name like so. Then we need to say variable behavior sequence is assigned, or rather behavior sequence of type array takes on patterns at pattern name dot duplicate. Right? So we duplicate the array that we can get from this position in the dictionary. Excuse me. And finally, we don't need to do that inside here. We can say variable parameters of type dictionary is assigned a dictionary, right? And in that dictionary we've got the following. So we're taking pattern name, and pattern name. Okay, and then the behavior sequence, and that takes in behavior sequence. Behavior sequence not declared in the current scope. Oh, I see. So this should be tabbed once in. Okay. Noted. Okay. And then any other shared parameters like target node or position or whatever. So then we have to make a comment here and say that any other shared parameters like target node / position / etc. And now this is of course a warning saying that the dictionary is not being used. Okay, so at the end of this if statement you can just say print enemy ship controller assigning attack pattern to ship. And then we give it enemy ship ID. And then we say pattern assigned dot emit enemy ship ID pattern name and parameters. Okay, so this is still part of the if statement. After that print statement, we go and say else. So this becomes the else. Right. Else we say push error. What's the error? We're saying enemy ship controller unknown pattern plus pattern name plus an empty string. Okay. So that's the one thing. And we can still add in all of this stuff if we need to later. So that's good. For now, we'll just take away that comma because there's not currently anything. Right, so then in the NPC behavior manager, we need to do some changes there too. Okay, so going into the NPC behavior manager, add these new properties near the top. Okay, so we've got the current pattern string, we've got the current behavior node null, we've got the dictionary which is empty. So these are the three that it's already been suggested. Then we need to have a current sequence, a sequence index, and shared parameters. Let's add those in. Right, so we'll add in a variable here called current sequence. Oh, and these should all be on the same column. Don't I have the same column for anything? Okay, that's kind of irritating, don't you think? So move it to the nearest column, so column 30. And then move these to the same column. $60. So current sequence should have a type as well, and that type is an array, and we assign that as the following, just an empty array. We'll say this list of behaviors or behavior names, column example, seek, shoot, and flee. Okay, and then we have another variable down here which is called sequence index of type int, and we assign that as a value 0 by default, right? And the comment here is, let's move this to 70, right? The comment here is that we index into, it's the index into the current sequence. The current sequence array. Okay, and then we've got another variable called shared parameters, which is of type dictionary, and we assign that an empty dictionary, and the comment for this one is the parameters carried across behaviors. All right, so we can save that. You know, we could actually put this as the documentation comment, so let's do that. We'll just do double hash instead of single hash, and there it goes. So the same thing there, just put another hash here, and the same thing there. Done. Okay. I think 3-line separation for signals from variables makes it nice and readable. So this was line 60. I think we really do have to make all of this consistent. So we know when something is an assignment compared to an equality check. So this one can go to 60. This one can go to 60. Not equal, so that's different. And then these two as well. Perfect. So I need to go into on pattern assigned, which is over there. And I can update on pattern assigned to store the sequence and start the first behavior. So if enemy ship ID is not enemy ship.id, then return. Oh, I see. Okay, okay. So just so you can see for reference, it's trying to tell me to do this code here in the code block, which would have been execute pattern, right? Execute pattern would have done that code block. But we want to bypass execute pattern now because execute pattern just has this match pattern block for mono behavior patterns. And we're trying to work around that, right? So if the enemy ship ID is not enemy ship.id, return, right? And the reason for that, of course, is if we haven't selected a valid enemy ship ID, then there's nothing to do. We can't tell it to do anything because it's not a valid enemy ship, right? So then we can just say copy all of this code and paste it in here. I'm really not feeling like typing everything out again. So we'll just paste and tab everything. Shared parameters not declared in the current scope. So there's, oh, parameters. Yeah, parameters. So that was the problem. Start next behavior is a function we still have to define. So that's the problem over here. So ignore that part. Everything else seems fine, which is good. Then we can move all of these to the rightful spots. That's 23, and that's 20. Move them over to 60. Okay, and then save. So now we can do the next function, right? So that's 3 lines of separation. 1, 2, 3. So there, let's say func. Start next behavior. Underscore start next behavior. Okay, and the start next behavior should do the following. We'll just paste it in there and then tab these in and tab it in again. So if the sequence is greater than or equal to the current sequence size, print behavior pattern, current pattern, completed sequence. Then the pattern completed dot emit this. The signal, the pattern completed signal, which ship completed it, what did they complete, what was the status, success, right? And then current behavior is null, and the current pattern is also empty, right? So there's no empty, I mean, there's no pattern assigned to it. Current sequence dot clear, and the return, right? So that's if there is, if the sequence index goes outside the scope of the current sequence, right? So if the sequence had 3 and the index goes on to 3 or 4, right? Because it starts at 0. So if there were 3 behaviors in the sequence and we were on sequence index 2, which is the third sequence in the array because it starts at 0, right? So 0 is 1, then 1 is 2, and 2 is 3. So index 3 would be the 4th behavior, which doesn't exist, right? So we've gone out of the scope, in which case we then do all of these things. And what happens if we don't have that pass, right? Then we have this block of code here that does this. So all we have to do now is tab these into line, and that's basically the rest of the code, right? So the behavior key of type string is assigned the string current sequence at index sequence index dot to lower, and what is sequence index? Oh, it's a global for this current script. Okay, fine. No worries. Where was I? Here. Okay. 60, and the type was 30. But I was where? Up here. 90 something. Yeah, there we go. So this needs to go to 60. And this needs to go to 30 before this can go to 60. Okay. Let's save that. You can pass shared parameters as is or tweak per behavior over here. Phew. Then you no longer need the match pattern inside the execute pattern for the multi-step patterns. Update the on behavior completed to advance in the sequence. Update on behavior completed. So let's minimize that one. Cancel, activate, check status, on behavior completed. So now we need to do this one. And function on behavior completed, enemy ship ID type int, behavior type, which is a string, status is a string, data is a dictionary. So down here, we add this in. So if enemy ship ID is not enemy ship.id, then we return. Else, we continue with this block of code. And we just tab all of this in. The variable type is being inferred from a variant value, so it will be typed as variant. Warning, treated as an error. So this is a variant. No, it should be a string. So we'll set it to be a string. We expect it to be a string at this time, right? In the code. So that's fine. This should be 30 and this should be 60. And then just make those into 60 as well. Can save the code. Like that. Ready for pattern.emit. So that means we don't need this anymore. It's the same. Yeah, it's the same. Okay. And it said keep the cancel logic the same. Cancel pattern logic is the same, mostly the same. Function, cancel logic, cancel current pattern. If current behavior and current behavior has method deactivate, then call the deactivate function. If current pattern is not equal to an empty string, pattern interrupted.emit enemy ship ID and current pattern. Current behavior is null. Current pattern is empty string. Then here we have to add in current sequence is current sequence dot clear. And sequence index is 0. Okay, I think I'm really feeling happy with the amount of progress we are making, especially considering the last live stream where I was really tired and really not focusing, and we weren't making a lot of progress. And I was talking quite a lot, and I wasn't watching the time. And I do apologize for that. I know I should be more respectful of your time as those who are watching. You're giving me an hour of your time and your attention. So I really do need to be more respectful, and I do apologize for wasting your time in previous live streams like that. So coming back to, you can now simplify check status if you fully handle status inside on behavior completed. So behavior scripts have nothing major to change. Nothing major to change. So behavior seek and behavior shoot are already emitting completed, and the behavior completed dot emit ship seek and shoot status complete and data. That's exactly what NPC Behavior Manager now consumes. So just ensure they use completed or failed as status strings consistently. So yeah, so this is where we are now. And I just want to confirm that with Perplexity. So what I want to do now is I'm going to copy the code across again and ask it, look, this is what I've got now. Have I done everything you suggested? Have I missed something? If I've missed something, highlight it so I can make that change. So that's what I'll do, right? So let me just copy the code. So save the code, then go to enemy ship controller, select all and copy, and paste it here. So here is the newly modified code for enemy ship controller .gd, and we'll paste that in there. Okay, and then I can say here at the bottom, and here is the newly modified code for NPC behavior behavior manager.gd. Okay, and we'll paste that in there after I copy it. So that's here. Select all, copy and paste. Right? Please make sure all your suggested changes are implemented and that I haven't left anything out. Or forgot to remove something where I should have. Once that is done, we can move to the next step in the process. Likely testing. Skip that. Your new multi-behavior pattern system is wired up correctly with just a couple of cleanup consistency tweaks you can make. The patterns dictionary is defined and used correctly for the attack pattern. Test attack pattern builds behavior sequence from patterns attack, duplicates it, and puts it in parameters under behavior sequence that matches the intended design. Existing movement helpers like move enemy to waypoint, move enemy to random waypoint, etc. still emit a single seek pattern without a sequence, which is fine for now since they are legacy mono pattern helpers. Nothing critical is missing here for the new pattern system. To test the multi-behavior pattern, you should be calling test attack pattern, for example, from input or another trigger. And then the NPC behavior manager, what's good and matches the design of the new fields, current sequence, array, sequence index, int, shared parameters dictionary, and on pattern assign, filters by enemy ship ID, stores pattern name and parameters into current pattern and shared parameters, extracts current sequence from parameters at the index of behavior sequence, and then validates that the sequence is not empty and resets sequence index to 0 and calls start next behavior. Then in start next behavior, if the sequence index is past the end, it emits a pattern completed and clears the pattern state. Otherwise, it reads the current sequence at sequence index, converts to lowercase, finds that key in available behaviors, and calls activate on the matching behavior with shared parameters. Right? Then cancel current pattern, deactivates the current behavior if possible, emits the pattern interrupted if there is a current pattern, clears current behavior, current pattern, current sequence, and resets sequence index to 0. I know I'm going a bit fast, but I'm just trying to make sure that I've got everything covered and I've not left anything out because we are almost on the hour. So so please bear with me as I zoom through this. If something is wrong, you will know it because I'll flag it and say, oh, hang on, wait, what's going on here? Okay, so on behavior completed, it filters by enemy ship ID. On status equal to completed, it increments sequence index, clears the current behavior, calls start next behavior, and then on status equals failed, it emits pattern failed, the signal, and then clears the current behavior or the current pattern or the current sequence, right? And then emits ready for pattern at the very end. And so these are exactly the multi-behavior chain semantics you wanted. What you can safely remove or simplify is the old mono pattern via execute pattern. Excuse me, and activate behavior. This is now redundant for patterns like attack that are defined as sequences and come through on pattern assigned via behavior sequence. So if you are no longer using execute pattern anywhere, and from the provided code it isn't being called, then you can delete execute pattern, activate behavior, and check status. If you want to keep a simple path for legacy single behavior patterns, you could still use the behavior sequence even for them, instead of using execute pattern at all. Functionally, even if you leave these in, they won't break the new system as long as nothing calls execute pattern. They are just dead code now. So behavior seek and behavior shoot.gd, both behaviors are implementing activate and store parameters. Set is active and do their work in the process function. The emit behavior completed, signal as expected, and behavior seek emits completed when close enough and includes target position and final distance in the data. Behavior shoot validates the enemy ship, the gun system, and the target, checks target validity, range, and line of sight inside process, calls complete shooting when necessary. Complete shooting emits behavior completed with behavior type shoot. These match what NPC behavior manager expects in on behavior completed. Summary of what's left to adjust, optional cleanup, remove the execute pattern and the ones that it recommended, and then functional flow for multi-behavior patterns is complete. The enemy ship controller defines patterns and passes behavior sequence in parameters. The NPC behavior manager manages and executes the sequence. Seek and shoot, behave, and signal completion or failure correctly. You are ready for the next step, which is testing the attack sequence in a scene and watching the debug prints to verify the transitions, which we'll do in the next live stream. Okay, we've reached the hour. So I'm going to say thank you very much to Cubes, our junior DevVenturer. Your support means a lot. And to everybody else, please do visit coffee.com/mtkdev. The link is here at the bottom and in the description of the video. You can also check Discord in our, the link is also in the description for all live stream videos. And yeah, that's it. Please like and subscribe and share the link with anyone and everyone you can. And thank you so much for your time and attention. I'll see you all in the next live.